Whether on the field, on the court, or on the balance beam, there's more to winning than the final score. Hi, I'm Patrick Manning of Black Desert Resort. We recognize the effort it takes to succeed. That's why we are proud to partner with the Utah Checkdown, the podcast that tells you the story before the game, then gives you a recap of what happened when it's all over. The grit, the glory, and the disappointments. Join us for stories of Utah's finest athletes and coaches. Thanks for listening.
You're listening to the Utah Checkdown podcast. And now your host, Josh Furlong.
Welcome back to another edition of the Utah Checkdown podcast. I am Josh Furlong. Happy to be back with you again for another week. It's kind of an important week. Just a little game. Nothing too serious. You know, we're gonna have some fun. But before we get into all that, I have a special guest for us today. You know, I've been promising special guests at times, and sometimes it comes through, sometimes it doesn't. But I'm excited about my special guest today. His name is the one and only Bryan Brown. You may know him on Twitter as Brown Bear. What other offensive line aficionado? Like, what are we gonna go with, Bryan?
I've been known to tell people that my favorite positions were left out and end and guard, end of the bench, guard of the water. So
where were you when Cam was going to the hydration cooler, bro?
Listen, I have been on my soapbox about where was the regulation on that for a while now.
Okay.
So yeah, it's but no, I you say special guest. I don't know how special I am. You and I went to lunch one day. I was like, man, it's got to be tough this season. You were like, kind of is. I was like, well, if you need someone to commiserate with, I'm more than happy to join in. So I guess that's what this is. But it's a good week at the very least to talk some ball and we called it fan therapy in our little text thread, and maybe provide a little hope. You know, I know there's some people out there looking for some hope this week, so we'll see how that goes. And thanks for having me on, man. I don't really do this much anymore for a profession, but it's fun to see people that I built relationships with, and still really appreciate talking with you, and more importantly, the work that you do, man, because it is crazy necessary, and you do a great job.
I appreciate it. It's all fun, right? Like, it's not always easy, right? But it's fun. I can't complain too much. There was somebody. I was at my youngest son's basketball game last night, and they knew who I am, and so they were asking me questions like, "Oh, who's playing here and who's this?" And then finally, one of the wives to one of the guys is just like, "Do you get tired of hearing all of this from people?" I'm just like, "No, I'm okay. Like, it's fine. Like, at the end of the day, like, I could be working a 9-to-5 job in an office somewhere that makes me miserable, or I could be talking sports all the time. So I'm more than happy to be able to talk sports. So that's why we have a podcast."
And I mean, I think the relationship aspect is always the part that was interesting to me about sports. It was never about anything other than just being able to connect with people. And to your point, I think it's almost more fun to do it in person sometimes, and have, like, it's a nice refreshing change to not have to respond to comments and whatnot. But in the era that we live in, the posts and comments of others are a critical part of this, and so you take it and interpret it, and but I think the interesting part about sports is for me has always been the connection to community, to relationships, that sort of thing. And that's where I always, even now, where I don't really do this anymore. You mentioned working in an office. I work in a warehouse, which I actually think is a step up from an office, depending on
I do too.
what kind of warehouse you're working in. Mine just happens to be a little more surrounded by a lot of electronics, so that makes me happy. But it's a lot better than having to go dig a ditch, do this job. And I tried to do it for a while, and it was a lot of fun. But it's the relationships that have always lasted for me, and I think Especially as I've stepped back and been able to just kind of reabsorb being a fan almost again, you start to realize just how much sports are needed, necessary to build that community and those ties and really, how important it is to have places to be a fan and feel, I guess, welcome in a sense, or to have people to talk about things with, like, especially this season. I think this season has been the season where I've engaged with my friends and my peer groups the most about, like, man, this is tough because it's again, I don't root for the team like I used to, but it's just hard to watch. And I think this week provides a really interesting maybe opportunity for Utah to change the fates a little bit.
Well, I think when sports is kind of an out, right? It's an entertainment value. It's an opportunity for you to kind of think about something other than work or family life or hard things going on in life. When sports, that entertainment becomes a challenge, that makes it very difficult. So, it's easy to sit here and just say, oh, it's just a sport. And it is, right? Like at the end of the day, there's some people that are getting paid to play a professional sport. But at the end of the day, it's just a bunch of guys and women in their sports. I'm not going to exclude them, but it's them playing a sport that they love and seeing how far that they can take it, right? And it's there for our entertainment, and we're excited for that, And as a media member, and as you know this, like you become kind of desensitized to wins and losses to some extent because you have a job, right? You're there to report on something. I tell people all the time, I honestly don't care about the results of games, no matter what game I'm watching. I tell people actively on Twitter that I'm a Cowboys fan. I hate the Cowboys because they drive me crazy. But at the end of the day, like I don't have that same emotional tie to it anymore because I'm so used to looking at storylines and I'm so used to doing that. So when I'm watching the Cowboys, I don't really care. I'm there to have fun. It's the same way in my reporting is because I just go and I do it. Like my kids will take me to I take them to Jazz games, but you get what I'm saying. We'll go to a Jazz game and I can't cheer. Because forever I used to cover the Jazz and I had to be desensitized to that and just stop, which growing up, I was a diehard Jazz fan. I'll just say that, right? And so it was very difficult to make that transition. When I got into the industry, my very first professional opportunity was interviewing Jerry Sloan to talk to him about a game, that was going on. And it was crazy because he was like the guy, right? And so it changes. When things like this happen, it can be tough, and I hope that we can provide context to why things are going on. That's kind of what we'll try to get into today. I don't, if you're looking for hope, it's a game that there is hope, right? This is a game that anything is possible, and so we'll kind of paint that picture. But before we jump into that, I want to tell you about our partners, Black Desert. Black Desert Resort isn't just your home. It's an endless retreat where life is played your way. From intimate studios to spacious 4-bedroom suites, the raw beauty of southern Utah is your new backyard. Discover its championship golf course, exquisite dining, and world-class outdoor adventures, all yours to conquer. This is luxury your way. Learn more about owning a luxury residence at blackdesertresort.com. Come play, come stay. You been down to Black Desert at all?
I haven't yet, but seen a lot of beautiful surroundings, and it's on the to-do list at some point in time for sure.
Oh, it's an incredible resort. Like it's not done yet, right? Like they have a lot of it done so that they could do the PGA Tour, but it's like their vision down there is pretty remarkable. You can hate golf and still want to be down in that area. So, it's pretty remarkable to kind of see what they've done, but. It'll be interesting to see how it all develops down there. St. George, I will say, St. George has become one of the most bustling cities in the entire state, and it's a challenge to drive down there. They need to fix some of that stuff. So
it was a bit of a challenge even when I was a student down there back in like 2009, 2010. Man, and like not just thinking about that, like it is. But I do think, to your point, the growth has been incredible, but they do need a crown jewel, something like that. And I think that's really what's so impressive about what they've done with that area and that particular course is it really showcases how beautiful that area is. And I was talking to my boss about it today. He's like, do you think he's not from Utah?
Okay.
So he's a Texas guy. He's like, do you think there's going to be a chance for me to play golf this winter? I was like, oh yeah. Like, let me tell you, buddy, like he flew into town today and he's just like, what's that white stuff? I was like, winter's here, man. Like, I'm sorry. This is your first real year in Utah. And So it's it's a beautiful course, and they did a phenomenal job, like you said. I'm excited to see what comes with the rest of the development down there. And I think the other exciting part too is just you talk about sports, like the growth of sport here in Utah,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's that's another area, another aspect is getting PGA here, and St. George is a perfect place for that kind of thing.
Oh, I love it. I think it's great.
Mhm.
So you didn't come here to listen to us talk about PGA, so we're going to talk about you. So let's jump into what's kind of happened since we last talked on Monday. Obviously, Monday was the return of the Kyle Whittingham press conference. We talked about that a little bit about what's going on there. Kyle is still going to play his fun QB roulette game where we don't really know. And even if you do know, and, I've heard many things about this, but I don't want to say officially because I've been burned. So, Bryan, where is Utah at with this QB situation? Where do you think they should be?
I got excited there, and I think you can see the joy on my face because I wonder if
did.
Kyle Whittingham even knows who the quarterback is. I wonder if he's just he told
Throws a
Bajakian, like,
dart.
hey, yeah, don't tell me till Saturday. I want to be surprised, right?
Oh man, that would be so. Do you think Kyle would trust anybody to do that though? Maybe Andy Ludwig.
He might have trusted Andy Ludwig
Yeah,
to
exactly.
do it. I don't think Mike Bajakian's quite on that level yet.
No.
I mean, Kyle
Tell me on
obviously knows who the quarterback's going to be, but it may just be Kyle and Mike who know, and that's it. Maybe Kyle's wife. I don't know. It is. I mean, it's so funny because he talks about it, but I can speculate because I'm just who am I? It's going to be Brandon Rose. That's the one thing that I feel like in almost everybody you talk to. Like if you know Kyle Whittingham at all, and he's been doing this for 20 years, Brandon Rose is the most likely choice.
Why do you say choice. Most likely? I'm curious why you say that.
Well, there's a couple things. One, the way he kind of phrased some of his comments from the press conference on Monday, the way he talked about him in the coaches show on Tuesday, he talked about how he's sneaky athletic. He's a great basketball player, has great hands. He's 4.6 speed. I think they like the dynamic of him being able to run the ball. He is a little bit bigger. He's been in the program for a longer period of time. I also think Brandon Rose has stuck around when others have not, and I think that has built a lot of loyalty with Kyle. And
very loyal guy.
Yeah, and I don't want to say underestimate, but it's hard to estimate just how much the impact of NIL and the changes of the roster turnover have really hit Kyle. I think they've hit him pretty hard.
Yeah, especially this year.
Yeah, and it does feel like it started to catch up a little bit in that regards with the program. But the other thing too is just Brandon has a better presence on the field. He feels, I don't want to say more like an adult, because if it were me, I'm going with Isaac.
Yeah,
and
same.
It's the skill set's there. The arm talent is incredible. Isaac's got more experience as a player. That's crazy to say because he's only 18, but he's literally he started at Corner Canyon as a sophomore, right?
Yeah.
Sophomore, junior.
Yeah, it was because you had Devin Brown come in.
Yeah,
right before he would have started as a sophomore if Devin didn't come in. But yeah,
right. But it didn't matter because he still played as a freshman. He's played as a sophomore there. Like even all through Little League, he was a starting quarterback. So that he's played a ton of football. I think, and I don't want to get too much in the weeds about the backup quarterback situation. It's just been problematic. But to me, it just that if we used to play a game on, I think it was Locked On Utes or one of the games that I called in our estimation, where we would try to read between the lines of what Kyle would say. And I think some of what he's saying is like, I just want a quarterback that's older.
Yeah.
I want a quarterback that's a little more experienced in the system. And so I think it's going to be Brandon Rose. I would go with Isaac. I would have gone with Nate Johnson, and I would have modified the system a lot more the past couple of years to be more useful for a younger quarterback. But that's not. I think that's part of why this season has gone the way it's gone. Was Kyle was so he's so hyper fixated on stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you talk. He is an analytics king, and I don't think people realize that as much. Like when it comes to data, he'll always present it. He has it memorized, almost chapter and verse. Like they are very strategic in how they use analytics in their recruiting processes, everything like that. So he may not buy into all the analytics that everybody else uses per se, but his stuff he really believes in. And I think as part of that, like he really just bought into Cam Rising being his quarterback.
Yeah.
And I think there's a juxtaposition there where like he's such a strong-willed individual and he is really willed himself to such a powerful position and so much success. I think sometimes he almost feels like he can will things to happen just by doing it. And listen, I'm not gonna get in his way with that one, but it almost felt like he felt like he could just will Cam Rising to be healthy this season and even last year a little bit too. And so it's one of those things. And some of it is just like Cam Rising is really the perfect quarterback for Kyle
Perfect.
Whittingham. Yeah.
I think honestly, I think you look at Kyle Whittingham, maybe not different, but you look at the last few years different if you don't have a Cam Rising, because the second, and you were covering Utah at the time, so you knew when Kyle talked about Cam, he glowed, right? Like there was something different about Cam, and whatever that trait is, Kyle put his entire trust in Cam Rising. I don't think I've ever seen anybody have that much trust, especially a quarterback in Kyle Whittingham's system. That's why things started to deviate a little bit from what Kyle traditionally used, is because Cam Rising was able to be that loyal guy that just did everything you need to. And Cam, to his credit, he did it, right? Like it's not like he was loyal to a fault and it's like, oh no, Cam is terrible, you got to get him off the field. I mean, you had some of that on the Arizona State game, but for the most part, Cam Rising did everything he needed to, and so he could take those chances. You had Andy Ludwig, who is Kyle's guy as well, and so the three of them combined together, this became a dynamic trio that just had complete trust in each other. And so when that is gone, you're seeing a lot of that, right? And I think some of that has been kind of carried on to the players, where last year everybody kind of understood that the chances of Cam coming back, I mean, any realistic chance of him coming back early was out the window, right? I mean, the fact that he was even entertaining coming back was kind of crazy in my opinion, but they understood that coming.
It felt strategic, right? Like they were trying to throw teams off a little bit with that, and I think
that's Kyle's MO.
It is, yeah, and I understood that to some degree. Again, you hyperfixate on things that you think work, and you do this long enough, then you're really not going to just deviate from your plan just because one thing changes, right? But I think to that end, like I knew just as a casual observer that there was no way Cam was coming back.
No.
By the starter, like and some of that is just being around sports long enough and knowing that like any ACL tear takes a long time unless you're magically flying to Germany and getting whatever magic PRP therapies they have over there. I don't know if they're mixing it with schnitzel or what the situation is. Yeah, I hope so, man. It's delicious. Good. Yeah, of course I'm thinking about sausages on the podcast, but whatever. It's just that was. And I don't know. I mean, yes, last year kind of felt like, well, yeah, if he comes back, we can transition and this and that and the other. And I think there was some messaging that kind of got a little funky too along the way. But it was just the weird part about it to me was just the way that they wanted to stick to like, yeah, Cam's coming back. He's coming back. It was like February. And I remember him going on an interview with somebody saying, yeah, we expect Cam to start.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. He just had the surgery. Like this is
maybe a week ago.
This is bold. Yeah. And so that part of it, like it seemed kind of mysterious, and maybe they felt like they had enough talent or whatever to that end, or I don't know. Maybe it was a recruiting ploy to try and get guys in. It's hard to say. There's so much that happens behind the scenes that we don't have access to and all that kind of stuff. But this year, and maybe the other thing, I'll say it this way. I think that that program has been incredibly proud of its ability to develop players.
Mm-hmm.
And at times that gets overhyped. And I think at the quarterback position, we've now learned after 2 straight years of highly touted, talented prospect that maybe was a little bit raw or, didn't have the experience, was not able to translate immediately into the offensive system. And so now it's a reality like, hey, you can't just shove whatever quarterback you think is great in there and make it work. You actually have to adapt things. And Utah's been so good at going against the current or against the grain in college football and doing things a little differently that I can understand why they thought that the past couple of years. He said something in the coach's show, and I'm pretty sure you listened to it as well, that they didn't expect it was either coach's show or his interview where he said they didn't expect Isaac to be the backup quarterback, and I was just like,
You named him
ever?
number 2.
Yeah, like you didn't ever expect him to play. And so I think, some of it is a little bit of hubris with the program, and because they have been so successful in doing that. And like last year, the sheer tonnage of injuries, and they really did just plug and play guys for the most part. But quarterback position has always been a problem. And I think that's, maybe that's why he's keeping it so close to the vest right now. And some of it is just because that's what they always do. But I also think, like, because it is such an important part about it, and it has not worked out well with Isaac, which breaks my heart because I have a ton of faith and belief in Isaac, and I really don't think this is his fault at all. I that's why I lean towards Brandon.
And that's the thing where with this, where everything that's gone on, in my opinion, I still think playing Isaac is the best case scenario if you believe that he is your starter moving forward, and I think they do. But the thing here is it doesn't really matter who's under center. And the reason I say that is because if Utah does not adapt to their skill sets, it doesn't matter. And so you can have Brandon Rose out there. You can have Isaac Wilson out there. You can even have Luke Batari out there. If Utah can't manage to adapt to their skill sets, and that doesn't take a ton. I don't want to say it doesn't take a ton because I'm not a coach, and I'm not trying to sit here and say, oh, if you just did this, Monday morning quarterback stuff. But at the same time, if you can adapt to their strengths, it's going to be so much easier. I've talked to people that have said that Isaac is put in a very similar situation because Eric Kerr very much so takes a lot of what Utah does. But at the same time, they're making Isaac do it in a way that isn't necessarily natural to what he was used to. And so now when you're changing that, and that's always going to change in the collegiate level, right? There's very few kids that are coming out of high school and immediately adapting to the college level based on the exact same, plays that they ran at the high school level. But when you're not doing it to help him, you're starting to see that confidence come down from Isaac where he's making mistakes that he wasn't making before. Early on, there were some of those throws. Like there was that throw at Utah State where he hit Money Parks on the sideline. He looked off Brant Keith. I mean, there were so many beautiful things that he did that were veteran-level plays. That's who Isaac can be. To me, going into this, and we don't have to rehash this whole QB battle, but to me, I don't know that we know anything about Brandon Rose outside of he's been in the system for 3 years. Maybe that gives him more credence to be able to have more leeway with Kyle Whittingham and trusting him. But if a freshman comes into fall camp and is beating you, that doesn't give me a lot of hope that you have what it takes to be there. It just means that they've poorly managed Isaac Wilson, and now they're looking for an answer to try to figure out something else.
I spot on with all that, and I think there's to that point. I think with Brandon Rose, very under discussed aspect of quarterback play is decision making, being able to be timely with your decisions, and I think that's a lot of what's happened with Isaac is his ability to make decisions in a timely manner has been severely disrupted because that offense doesn't fit his style of play in the sense like he was always in an up tempo system at Corner Canyon. Eric Kerr goes with tempo. They play a fast style, easy one read throws, and I shouldn't say easy one read throws, but Utah is so multidimensional in terms of how they run their passing games, not just vertically but also horizontally. And I think you saw it against Houston. They tried to just give him some easy throws, and the swing passes. It's frustrating to fans. I get it, but when you're a quarterback and you haven't practiced that all year, it is a touch throw. Like it's not an easy, nothing those guys do on the field is easy, but like you just say, go out, go throw 3 swing passes. Like it's nobody's business.
You take it for granted because it's just a short pass, right? It's not.
Yeah. It's not a distance as much as it is angle and getting set up. And that's, the other part of it too, is because everything's set up, you can see Isaac really struggling to stick with his fundamentals. So all this is contributing to it, right? And so you start getting sloppy with fundamentals, that knocks your confidence down. Then you start thinking through things. And so I think there are some simpler ways that Utah could have helped him from the beginning. They still haven't gone tempo. I've been asking it for like a decade now. Someday maybe we'll get a tempo.
That doesn't control
offense.
The clock, though.
See, and here's where math comes into play. No,
you see, 1 + 1 does not equal 4.
So if you have 4 possessions versus 6 possessions, 6 possessions can actually be more clock anyway.
That doesn't make any sense, Brian.
I know, but you don't really strangle teams in the fourth quarter doing things that way. And so that's where it gets difficult for Utah, right? Because they've had this recipe of how they've done it. You're going to control the ball, you're going to wear the other team down, and in the fourth quarter, you're just going to run it down their throats. And I mean, the crazy part about it is that's a lot of what BYU has done all year long to win football games. No surprise, given the amount of crossover with people there, and it really is a almost a beautiful way to win football games, where you just slowly strangle the proverbial life out of a team until make them quit, right? And I thought, again, another little side piece. Hearing Kyle talk about all this week, for whatever reason, it's very nostalgic for me. Maybe it's because I'm getting older. Maybe it's because it's just like, the rivalry's coming back. Hard to say. But he talked about how his favorite rivalry win was the 3-0 game down at BYU.
A terrible game for most people.
Yeah, like I'm thinking of all the ones that I loved, and I was like, that one's nowhere near the list. Like, I don't like.
If Kyle could have won that 2-0, he would have.
Yeah. I think, and if there was a way to just score one single point, we would have done that.
Could you imagine a game 1-0? Oh. It's a baseball score in football.
How did you just score an extra point? Well, you see.
Let me tell you.
Yeah. But like, to him, that was a perfect game, right? And so some of the stuff that I love about offensive football, one of my favorite games was the Jason Shelley comeback against BYU, because number one, like, you just kind of shrugged at that point. You're like, well, if Utah loses, it's no big deal. You're still going to the Pac-12 championship game. Doesn't affect the season. Streak had to end at some point, blah, blah, blah. And then they fought back and just decided, nope, we're going to win this one. And it was incredible. So I think those are all things that give you hope that like some kind of miracle can happen. But I think it's real hard to have optimism, because we spent the first 20 minutes of this podcast almost just talking about what a struggle the quarterback position is right now. And so there are some things that you can do to help Isaac. I think the biggest thing is you've got to rebuild his confidence and find, if you're not going to go tempo, you've got to find a way to make it, whether you're using personnel or what, to make that offense have some rhythm just naturally, so that he can make some throws and feel comfortable and confident back there. But I think, again, all this conversation makes me think even more that it's going to be Brandon Rose, because that takes a lot of work, and you're really betting on hope in that regards, that something goes right early on and he can grow from that. Whereas Brandon Rose has not kind of been beaten down as much. I still don't think, like, his biggest problem is that Brandon holds onto the ball for too long.
Yep.
And I've seen it in
which
practice.
Kyle has complained about with Isaac. So is that going to get anybody? Yeah. I don't know.
The only hope is that, like, maybe you're going to run him a little bit more in the QB run game, because he is a little bit better of an athlete. He's a little bit more experienced in that regards. Now, they're both tough kids. They're both smart, good football players, great arm talent. I think Isaac's got a little bit more accuracy, in my opinion. Maybe that's just because I've seen more of him. But again, you can let the fans at home listen to this and sort through it all and kind of decide what they would do. But I think the real crux of the whole conversation is that Utah needs to get something productive from the quarterback position if they're going to have any chance to win this game on Saturday.
Well, and on top of all this is you just changed to a new offensive coordinator, right? And so going into that Houston game, I know a lot of people were frustrated with that Houston loss, and I think, you look at that game, and yes, absolutely, Utah blew that game, right? I would say that Houston looks better than they have been, and I think Zion Chris at under center, who is just a running back in a quarterback's position, like, they look better with him, but at the same time, Utah lost that game. Okay, so we get that. But at the same time, Mike Bajakian had 4 days of real prep to be able to get that game, because near the end of the week, they're traveling, they're going through walkthroughs. You don't really have a ton of time to implement that offense. It's really those first few days, especially Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Tuesday being one of the biggest days. If you can't get that in and he's trying to, kind of grasp at straws of what he needs to do, that's a challenge. And so you absolutely hung out Isaac to dry in a lot of respects in that game, because you didn't have an offense for him. They did things to help him, and he got comfortable, and then you pulled him. Now, moving forward, you have now a whole bye week. You've got Bajakian, who's essentially going to have 2-ish weeks of prep. Do you think that gives him enough time to, I don't want to say change this offense, because it's not going to change, right? It's more adding new wrinkles, maybe adding new things, maybe adding stuff that he could play off of what they've already used or shown on film to be able to do that. Do you think that's enough time to maybe change this offense to a point where you're optimistic of what they could do?
I think to your point, you're not going to change concepts with an offense or what the fundamental belief system is. But what it really allows you to do is allows you to get enough reps to where guys are comfortable with whatever your changes are. You saw the screenplay to Brent Keithy seemed to be a wrinkle that they, you know, it installed during the Houston week, and that was super effective. I think you're finally using the offensive line, and we've wanted an athletic offensive line for so long. Now you finally got it, and then we haven't seen the screen game nearly as much, and this is where it becomes difficult having an offensive coordinator like Andy Ludwig, because he is so brilliant, and he does kind of hyper focus on these one little things that he forgets that you have to do some of that more grandiose, eye catching stuff nowadays because kids are just different. um, I do think it does give you enough time to get the reps in. I think that's the biggest thing. It gives you time to get the biggest problem with this football team, and especially the offense right now, they're just not playing with any kind of confidence. And so it is getting yourself some confidence in the fact that, yeah, we can run inside zone from under center, but what we're going to do is we're going to make these little tiny changes in terms of either personnel or how it looks, from the defensive side of things to change it so that gives us a little bit of confidence in our ability to execute it more. And so that leads to, like they said, more energetic practices, right? And then the biggest thing is they just got to inject some fun into it. And for football players, it's fun to learn new stuff. It really is. You've been doing the same thing over and over again for a long, long time. This is the part of the season where you kind of start, October's a little bit dog day-ish, but really November starts to, you're starting to really feel the fatigue of both the physicality of the game and the fact that you've been doing this for 10, 12, however many weeks, including camp. And so you get to do something new and fresh that can really invigorate you. Now, how much, how different is going to look? Probably not that different, because again, you can't just completely rebuild an offense on the fly. But there are enough concepts. We saw it, like, honestly, like if Utah just executed the swing passes, and I know this is salt in the wound for everybody. It hurts me too. They could have just executed that last Saturday. I think they would have beat Houston.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
really do.
It honestly didn't take much to beat Houston last week or 2 weeks ago.
No. And Houston's a good football team. Willie Fritz is a really good football coach.
Oh, absolutely.
So, like, you have to give them some flowers, but that's not a game that Utah should have lost. And so I think it comes back to having things go in your way, having things go in your favor, catching a few breaks. You're trying to do that against the BYU team. I think that's the bigger risk in terms of this bye week happening when it does. If you're BYU, you're clicking, you're rolling. You don't want anything to disrupt that. And so now if you get it off to a slow, sluggish start in this game, that gives Utah just that a little bit of life. I was at Riverton at Sky Ridge the other night, and Riverton hit a 80-yard bomb to start the game, and that gave them enough belief in themselves that they stayed in that game all the way up to the very end and almost had a chance to knock off one of the best teams in the state. And Riverton did not have a winning record this year. Yeah. So it's high school is not college, but the basics are always the same in terms of you have to instill belief. And so I think you can do enough, either with trickeration or some misdirection, just like even some just basic QB run stuff, or freshening up the run game, right? Like maybe you get Mekhi Bernard in a little bit of a wildcat situation. I don't know, like anything you can do to just give it a little bit more, I don't want to say juice, but just a newish feeling, or get guys to buy in a little bit more is going to help. I really believe that.
Well, momentum's a real thing, and playing fun is a real thing. I think if you can give any of these players maybe just some optimism that, hey, we have this special wrinkle in there for you, that changes their mindset on how they're going to play. Then they can come in there and do what they need to do. On top of that, you have a team now that is, I don't want to call it fighting back, but Micah Pittman is no longer on the team. There's a few other players, that's out there. I've had it from a few sources, but he's no longer on the team, and him and some other players, and I'm not going to name some names because it's not my place. When you have a bad attitude about how things are going, it doesn't help the situation. And so when you've got a team that is trying to all work in the same way, and you've got these outside sources, maybe not outside, inside sources that are making things a distraction, that becomes a challenge, right? And so when you're trying to bring the fun and trying to bring in the excitement to a game, you need everybody pulling in the same direction. One of the biggest reasons why, and we'll get into this, is why BYU is having such a successful year is because they're all pulling in the same direction. They're having fun. Kalani Sitake has always been kind of a fun-loving guy, and that's been maybe some of the knock against him is because he's too fun. He's too casual in that respect where, he wants to be your buddy instead of being a coach. That's not fully fair to him because he is a good coach. But you can see when guys are having fun and they have that belief. That Kansas State game did more for BYU than anything. You coming off that SMU game, you left that game thinking, we're terrible. We got to win, but nobody was happy about how that goes. You then go to Kansas State where everything went right in your direction, and a lot of that was you, and a lot of that was just luck. Everything works in your way, and you become really excited about what's going on. And so when you have that momentum, you can play like a top 10 team. The reality is BYU doesn't have the roster of a top 10 team compared to a Georgia, an Alabama. Utah doesn't have that roster. So I'm not trying to sit here and make the comparison that Utah is a better team, right? But when you don't have that stuff, playing loose, playing free, playing fun really changes the dynamic of a game because these guys aren't thinking about it. Those instincts kick in. You have the belief. You're listening to everything your coach says. And yeah, there's a chance for a letdown. BYU could absolutely come into this game, thumping their chest and saying, we're 8-0 and we're going to do this. We're going to go take, Utah down at Rice-Eccles Stadium, a place that they haven't won since 2007 or whatever it is. That becomes a challenge, right? But at the same time, you're more likely to succeed when you're having fun. That's what made Utah so successful in 21 and 22. They had fun. They had a terrible start to that 21 season. This wasn't great.
Yeah.
There was player-led meetings. They were talking about what they're going to do. Obviously, you insert Cam and things change, but that was not a good season to start. And now suddenly they're playing with confidence. They're winning games that they probably shouldn't have won. You beat USC. You've got all these different things, and suddenly you're in the game. And that's what can lift a lot of this, and that's where Utah's at right now. It's not that they don't have talent on that roster. This is arguably one of Kyle Whittingham's most talented teams from top to bottom on paper. But if you can't translate that to the field, which means getting the guys to buy in, it doesn't really matter. And so that's where I think Utah has to allow them to get into it. This team going to practice this week was probably the most optimistic I've seen this team in a long time. It felt like it was maybe one of those 21-22 seasons where that doesn't mean it's going to translate to a win, but you can start to see them believing. That bye week, for whatever reason, helped them, and that allows them to do that. So if there is any hope, it's that they're finally maybe pulling in the same direction and have kind of the same mindset going into this game.
And I think you saw a little bit of that with kind of the comment about the indoctrination of the rivalry, right? And just an overarching piece of this. A lot of what's happened with this program is that the diversity in terms of where they're pulling in guys. This rivalry is not as intense as it was in the past in terms of people growing up within it, right? I think the roster having so many California, Texas, Florida, Oklahoma, Arizona guys on it now, and just the diversity of that. I think the Hawaii kids still kind of get it a little bit because there's enough Utah BYU relationships down there still from former players and whatnot. But I think you're seeing that try to come out with the way I saw somebody say, why would Jalen Glover say what he said? Because they're trying to get an identity.
Yeah.
Like they're trying to do everything you're talking about. They're trying to infuse some energy, some ambition, whatever it is into this roster to try and give it some life. And like you said, have some fun with it, make it competitive. And, I think that could be, and maybe that is the best kind of tool and technique that they're using this week is bringing in all those former players and whatnot to try and take away from the on-field thinking that's happening and guys trying so hard. Cause you said, this is a talented roster. And I've wavered a little bit on that, but at the end of the day, when I think about it, man, there's cause I think Utah's had some recruiting's ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of that is portal related. I think some of that is just, having to adjust so much the last couple of years, but there are a lot of talented guys on this roster. I don't think there's any doubt about that, but it's how you execute when you're on the field. Right. And BYU is executing as a team far better than Utah is right now. And so if you start to get guys thinking about the competitiveness, the history, right? Start getting former players in all the time to talk about what it means to them. You start to build that legacy. You start to rebuild that culture inside of Utah that it feels like has dropped off this year. And you mentioned cutting out the guys that are problematic, and um, that happens every year
Yeah,
in
this isn't
in a
unusual.
sense. Yeah, it gets so much more glow in a season like this where winning isn't happening. Um, and so I think that's another way that you go about trying to win a football game in the sense of like there's only so much you can do schematically to really change things. There's only so much hitting and tackling drills and everything like that. But what you can start doing is instilling in these guys like this matters beyond just it's that I think the players have something called United Together Eternal Soldiers, right? That's what UTE stands for. Like that brings some kind of presence if you're a part of that. And when you can see it in front of you on a regular basis, like I'm not surprised that the team's exhibiting more energy, and they're going to need it because like this is a BYU football team that like uh, they are playing together so well as a team, not just offensively and defensively, but the way those two groups feed off of one another. It's really impressive.
So let's jump into BYU. I know we've 40 minutes into the podcast, and we're going to preview them. So obviously, first off, this is the game where you get the All Reds versus the All Blues. At least I assume that BYU is going to do that. They haven't officially posted it, I believe, at the time that we recorded this, but that's traditionally how they go. Utah's already released theirs. It's a throwback red. Beautiful combination. I mean, this is my favorite time to watch these two teams play because it's a perfect uniform matchup. So you get that. Obviously, an 8:15 kick. It's going to be a night game at Rice Eccles Stadium, which this year fans aren't really too excited about because the night game has been a curse of some sorts for Utah. But you get a rocking environment. You're going to have the night atmosphere and do all that. You're playing a team that is essentially yourself looking in the mirror in terms of how things are schemed, right? Kyle Whittingham has coached or coached alongside many of the people on the other side of that ball, right? BYU's top three guys, the head coach, the offensive coordinator, and the defensive coordinator, have all worked with Kyle Whittingham. They run the same system. Even Kalani, when he left Utah, followed Gary Anderson, which was following a Kyle Whittingham-style-led team. And so there's a lot of similarities here, right? And that presents different challenges for both sides of the ball because you're playing yourself. But it's all about, trying to get these little things going, to work in your way. Now, let's real quick before we kind of jump into this, I want to kind of give you some of the stats just to kind of see what this team is. So BYU offensively, they've been pretty solid, right? Their scoring offense is 24th in the country. Their total offense is 49th. So it's not the best in terms of total offense, but they're executing it at a high level, and so that's what makes it great, right? They're doing well. They're pretty even. Like their rushing and passing is exactly 59th in the country. They're just an even leveled team. Defensively, they have been a very, very good team, right? They've been much better than they have in years past where BYU could always score points. They could never hold people down, right? You bring Jay Hill in. You always knew last year was going to be tough for him to try to get his plan in. The second year is always generally the better year, and it's working. Their total defense is 38th in the country. They've got some really good things going on. They're opportunistic, they're aggressive, they're physical, they're trying to win the trenches. But more than that, more than even winning in the trenches, their linebacker play has been phenomenal this year. Those three linebackers that they have right there have done a tremendous job. Now, with that said, this is the toughest defense that BYU will have to face in Utah. Utah's defense ranks 15th in total defense. They're 14th in passing defense. And when was the last time Utah was ever 14th in passing defense? Like, that to me is wild because it's always been run defense is like top 15. But passing defense, they're usually like, 50, 40, 60, somewhere around there.
Thereabouts.
So, I mean, it's there. Crazy thing is they're 53rd in run defense. Scoring defense through 11th. They're just not doing a lot. I know we've talked a lot about this Utah defense and being a struggle. And yes, they've had games where they allow a ton of runs. Some of that is attributed to the players that are on the field or off the field due to injuries. But this is a tall task for BYU to face Utah. If there's any optimism for Utah, it's this defense. And I know that's always kind of the tried and true thing, but this is a defense that BYU hasn't faced. They faced close, right? Like SMU was a tough one. They faced against them. Kansas State has been tough. I'm throwing out the Kansas State game because that was such an anomaly of how things went. But this is literally the hardest test that BYU is going to face. So on the surface, what do those stats tell you, Bryan?
Well, I think it tells you that, like, to your point, BYU has found ways to win outside of just moving the football offensively. But when they do, it is beneficent. And so if you can get them off schedule, it gives you a chance. Kyle's focused a lot on the conversation, a lot of his conversation on Jake Retzlaff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a reason for that, because Jake's had an interesting career. You know, he didn't get a lot of offers because his senior season was basically canceled because of COVID. He was a junior that stepped in against Mater Dei, like at the end of the game, and managed. They're getting blown out, and he managed to score 2 touchdowns and make it respectable. And then didn't really retain the job at that point. It was kind of bounced around, and so he's a guy that has that ability to go off. But I think all that stuff that you talked about, it gives you confidence not only that Utah can go out and execute against this BYU offense, but it also gives you confidence that they can get Jake Retzlaff, maybe not force him into mistakes, because I think that's something that they've really struggled with the turnovers and whatnot. But also I think it really tells you, what it tells you is, like, the nuts and bolts of the defense are there, right? It's just little tiny things here and there that they need to adjust, and allowing Utah has been so hyper-focused on the rush game ever since Kyle's taken over. It's all about that rush defense. And so really, I think if I'm looking at it from a schematic perspective, I almost wonder if maybe you mix it up against BYU and try to really confuse them, in the sense of, like, maybe you don't go 4 down linemen. Maybe you go with your cowboy package where it's that kind of 3-3-5 with an extra safety, and you know, try to keep the, because you talked about personnel being a problem. I think we can say pretty clearly, like, it's the interior of the defense where they've lost the guys that are where all the depth and the ability was.
And you're expected to get them back this week, I will say. So you're expected to have probably the most healthy defense that you've had for most of the year coming back.
And so maybe that gives you a little bit of an advantage, because you can, I mean, and you've got a personnel grouping. I know that they tried to go the speed package with Van Fillinger on rush downs. I almost, or on, like, by rushing the quarterback, right? Yeah. I almost wonder if you go on regular running downs, if you aren't going with maybe some quicker players to try and disrupt that BYU offense early on in the run game, because I think BYU is going to try and come out and execute their run game on the ground. And so maybe you put some quicker players, maybe you put a Nate Ritchie in and put him a little closer to the line of scrimmage. You know, I think getting Corene Reed back was huge for this Utah defense. And I think what really proved that is the play of Lander Barton has now elevated substantially.
Absolutely. He's not thinking as much.
He didn't have to wear the green dot. He didn't have to get everybody else. And that's another thing that's been weird about this defense. Like, you know, I'm just having a flashback to Teo Johnson yelling at guys trying to get the run fit in against Arizona State right before Scadaboo ran for the touchdown, you know, that put the hammer, or put the nail in the coffin. I'm having a hard time with the metaphors. Hammered the nail into the coffin there. Getting all riled up.
You're
here.
ready to go.
Let's go. So, I mean, I think really what those numbers tell me is, like, it's not an insurmountable task for this Utah defense. And they are waiting for their moment, right? Their game where they can finally say, like, hey, we are legitimately a good defense, like all these defenses have shown in the past. And so maybe this is the opponent where you can get it done. It's not a juggernaut, right? On offense for BYU. Darius Lassiter, fantastic player. Chase Roberts, really dynamic. Outside of that, and I'm not going to knock LJ Martin or the rest of the, you know,
and to be fair, he's been injured, right? So
he has. But I also, like, I've seen some things from LJ where, you know, he's been a little rusty because of that injury, you know, and so maybe he'll be back at full force this game. Hard to say. He's a really talented player, but there's nothing about this offense where I'm like, well, you know, we should have just scheduled the golf game, you know, like we should have just gone to Black Desert instead, right? Like, there are opportunities to take advantage of it. And so I do wonder if, you know, and Scally with 2 weeks to prepare, like, I love Aaron Roderick, but, like, I'm going to take Morgan Scally 10 out of 10 in that matchup. I think the unique part about it is Utah at a confidence level defensively to where they actually feel like they can go out and execute against this BYU offense? Or excuse me, is Utah at a confidence level defensively?
One of my favorite stats of all of this, and there's a billion things that we could point to. Obviously, they've gotten a lot of turnovers and all that other stuff that BYU's had where Utah hasn't. My favorite is in the third and fourth down conversions. Third down, BYU converts the 108th best in the country, 35.1%. Not great, right? Like they haven't been great on third down. Fourth down, however, they're phenomenal. They're 83.3%. And you know, that's exactly what's helping them be effective, right, as they're doing that. But when you look at this is where everything turns, is because Utah is the number 2 team in the country on third down defense. They only allow 25.4% of conversions on third down. Now, granted, that goes up significantly on fourth down. They're the 68th best team, and they've allowed 52.9%. And so maybe this is where you have to be, right? In my opinion, Utah can do everything they can to be in those third down situations. And it's not like BYU's not going to be in third down, right? That just happens. So Utah has to be able to be effective on those third downs. And when I say effective, you have to get them in a fourth and long situations. If you give a BYU team a chance on fourth down to go, most likely Kalani Sitake is going to take it. And if he takes it, that's where Utah loses this game, in my opinion, is you have to keep them in long situations, or else this becomes a very tall challenge for Utah. That doesn't mean that they can't do it. Utah has done well in fourth down situations. Obviously, had the 2 goal line stance in Houston that can show what they are capable of. But anytime you can give a team a fourth down conversion, it just kills the morale of a defense. Third down, right? Like that's a standard play where if you stop them, okay, that still juices you up. If you lose it, it sucks, but like Utah's not really accustomed to that, despite everybody and these weird third and scally, stupid nonsense things. Utah's a phenomenal third down defensive team, and that's,
I love
in my
that
opinion,
that's still a thing. Like,
I don't know why people still think that, but these are the same people that think Kyle Whittingham should be fired every year. So I mean, it's probably the same.
Yeah, well, my adage is always that fans see what they see, and so let's try and explain some of the reasons why you're seeing what you're seeing, and I think part of it is that fans always watch Utah football and they don't watch other teams and realize how much better Utah is on third downs than other. The other part of it too, like you talk about all that. I'm looking at BYU's schedule. Where's the road game that they've played in that's anywhere near as hostile, loud, or chaotic as Rice Eccles? It's not even close.
SMU,
like the bounce house is fun.
Yeah, I mean the bounce house is good. SMU could be a challenge, but like no, you're
Friday night at SMU is going to be tough though, right? Because it's high school football in the state of Texas, and again, SMU was not the SMU that we're seeing right now. It was right as they started to make the quarterback change.
Agreed.
From Preston, is it Preston Stone? Was he the starter of that game?
I believe so.
Yeah, and so now they're on the other kid. I should have all this stuff in my brain.
Just have it. Come on, memorize it.
Yeah, I know. Brain no worky today. But so I think that's an element of it as well. Like I think if you're Utah, you almost want to get them into those fourth and middle. I used to call them fourth and average, fourth and brown bear, because it's okay to be average as long as you finish, right? And so as long as Utah finishes those fourth downs where it's 4th and 5. That's a great place to be, because Kalani is not going to lay off on that. That's like me in the cookie jar, right? I'm not going to say no. Like I'm going to take the cookie every single time. Like, and so he's just going to be. It's going to be the same way for him, where he's not going to say no to that. And so I think, to your point, as part of the game plan, you want to get him in that situation early on. And I think really what you want to do is. This sounds like such an antithesis way of thinking of things. I don't think you want to pressure Jake Retzlaff. I think you want to play everything in front of you as much as possible and make him make decisions in that moment, because I think that's where you get the good Jake, bad Jake.
Are you talking third or fourth down, or are you just talking in general?
Just in general, but I think, third down. So that's something where, you can vary up your keys or your tendencies so much more now coming into this game, especially knowing that BYU operates almost as like they don't care about third down. They care about third and fourth down together. Like that's the one that they're always operating on. And so it's like if you go that way, that really allows you to change your tendencies and vary things up. So maybe Utah blitzes a ton more on second down, whereas traditionally they love to bring pressure on third and bring it from exotic locations. Maybe you just drop back on third, knowing that you're going to get fourth down regardless, and try and force some of those fourth and longs like you're talking about, because you want Retzlaff to make a decision. And maybe that in turn pushes some more turnovers your way, because if you're dropping 8 or dropping 7, it's harder to throw in those tight windows. And I think to the point we've been talking about earlier, that Utah has the athletes to do that. It's the one-on-one stuff where it gets a little dicey, and so you can play a little more team defense. That could be potentially. I know what I'm saying sounds crazy, like Morgan Scalley not pressuring, but I think there is something to it. It's when he uses it.
Sure, and it's funny you say that, because that's the context that I think gets lost in analytics a lot, right? Like, it's easy to say, oh, this guy sucks under pressure. You don't know what downs those are, right? And unless you break those downs, it's a challenge. As a reference point, Jake Retzlaff's NFL passer rating in a clean pocket is 116.2. In a pressured pocket, it's 37.1. Absolutely different. And so I don't disagree with you, because I think they're going to expect those third down rushes. And so what you do in the other downs, I think, is probably more key, right? If you can pressure him and get him into that 37%, or not 37%, but the 37 passer rating in other downs, maybe that's where you're more opportunistic, right? Maybe that's where you get it, trying to figure that out. I mean, like, he has struggled a ton when under pressure in terms of the general analytics. Yeah. But at the same time, I agree with you that you can't just say third down, third and long, third and short, whatever it is, we have to pressure here, because he's a ball player, right? You've seen him make those plays. The win that they had against Oklahoma State, he absolutely did that. He took the game into his own hands. Utah, we've seen that they've over pursued at times. They lose contain, and then all of a sudden that quarterback runs out, and now it's a 20, 30, 40-yard gain because he uses his legs, and he's more than capable of doing it.
And I think the other thing too is you look at that pressure rate, and it doesn't talk about what, was it a 4-man pressure, 5-man, 6-man pressure? Where was the pressure coming from? Is it coming from the boundary or the wide side of the field? And that's where I think Utah can get exotic, right? And that's where I kind of talk about using the 3-3-5, because if you have 3 down linemen and you have guys the capability of like Logan Fano, and I think Connor O'Toole started to work his way back into it a little bit. It was good to see him against Houston. But you have some versatility with some of your edge players to where you can drop them into a boundary, meaning the narrower side of the field, and you're not going to get as exposed as much. And you can bring pressure from either the wide side or from the boundary and really force Jake into some bad decisions with even 3-man pressure. And so I think that's, when I talk about not blitzing as much, what I guess what I'm trying to say is, like, Utah's so used to their cage rush, their contain, where it's just the 4 guys trying to keep everything in front of them. And maybe this is a game where taking that stat of, like, in under pressure, under duress, he makes bad decisions. Well, let's get as many guys possible in traffic to either deflect balls or get in the way of balls or potentially pick balls. You know what I mean? And so there's that element and aspect of it too, where I think for fans, the answer is always we'll just send more guys. But it's like, can you do that effectively? Because I think Utah's done a lot of just AA blitzes this year where it's just like, okay, well, we sent 6 and got nothing, right? And so I think that's where, again, the bye week will help a lot with that too. You can be a little more exotic. I think Utah always waits till a little later in the season to unearth some of that stuff, because they want to be really confident. Yeah, I mean, it's the biggest thing is, however you do it, you've got to get Jake Retzlaff almost nervous, right? You playing with some off schedule, off rhythm, off plan, because that's when the potential for mistakes happen. And this defense, if they can be opportunistic, that's going to give the offense a big boost in terms of, like, they're not going to feel like it's all on them to manufacture plays.
And to me, in this game, maybe more than most, linebacker play is probably the biggest key for me. If you can get consistent linebacker play here, that is going to change the entire game for Utah. Jake Retzlaff, his stats, looking at Pro Football Focus, his most effective passing is up the center of the field. And it's usually like that mid-range, 10 to 19 yards. He's actually really effective, even deep, going 20 yards in the center of the field. his grade there is an incredible 93.2 in that middle center range. His second best is the deep center at 82.2. You have to have effective linebacker play. If you can't get that, this is going to be a very tall task for Utah. He's going to work on the outsides, right? Like, it's not like suddenly he's just going to throw all of those passes in the flats, or, it's going to be these crossing routes every single time. I mean, over the years, crossing routes have been very dangerous against Utah. So maybe that's where you go. But the linebackers, they have to communicate. Karene has to orchestrate that defense in the way that we've seen him do it. And if he can, I don't want to say that BYU can't beat you, because they 100% can. I'm still thinking that BYU wins this game, but I think if you can get effective play from that linebackers, if Lander Barton doesn't have to think and he can be instinctual and he can do what he needs to do, this becomes a much better opportunity for Utah.
I also think Lander's advantage as a linebacker is not always rushing the passer as much as it is being in coverage. And he can really be a shutdown guy with that. And so, to your point, if you can allow him to and A-Rod loves to run these clearing routes where it's like a double post and you sneak like a little wheel underneath. So if you can stay disciplined in whatever your plan is, and to your point, communicate, right? Because what it's all about is eye discipline when you're out there. It's the misdirection. And A-Rod loves to get you looking and thinking and everything like that, and get you, I don't want to say trapped, but in essence, just staying. He wants to fool you so that you don't stick with your keys, so that they can scheme open some opportunities. And so I think, to your point, linebacker play is going to be huge both on both sides of the ball, because I think, Utah offensively, as I've looked at, we can get to that a little bit, but I think Utah's advantage, like BYU doesn't have an advantage in terms of like having a great tight end group. I don't feel like they do. And I think Utah's got some players that can still play against whatever lineups you get. Smith Snowden has been great this year. I think Zamai Vaughn has played well. Cameron Cahoon has had a lot of opportunities. Like, I think he's the most likely candidate to get an interception. It feels like, for this team, because he's had, he and Lander Barton have had more passes bounce off their hands than anybody I can remember. But I mean, Cam's actually come through on a couple of them as well. So there's a lot of versatility with it. It doesn't feel like the safety play for Utah has been as high as it has in years past. But you also have some versatility, because I think even John O'Hall has shown, through his up and down play, he's made some real outstanding plays on third downs. And so again, this all comes back to the fact there is opportunity there. Do I believe that they're all going to put it together magically this game? No, just because I've seen what I've seen for the last, for the entirety of the season, but it's there, it's out there. There's potential for it.
Yeah, no, I think this is where Utah's really going to showcase what they can do on defense, or at least this is an opportunity for them to do it, right? And
I have to. This is the game.
And if you're not holding anything back, right? This is the game where you have to show your full hand, right? Whatever Morgan Scalley has that he can truthfully trust his team to do, he's going to show that. And if you're not, what are you saving it for? It's not like you're waiting for a Rose Bowl. That's not coming. You have to do this.
I know that you've got a game coming up in Iowa State and Colorado.
Who cares?
You're
you got to win games.
You're not going to win the rest of the season. There's nothing. I just had this mix of Will Ferrell and screaming in old school we got to keep our composure, right? This is the time.
You're my boy, Blue.
Just let it loose,
That's just that's the thing here. I understand coaches; they're kind of a funny people, because they want to not give everything, but at the same time, Utah's 4-4. What do you have left to lose? Honestly, if Utah went out there and ran trick plays on every single series, kudos to them, because what else do you have to give? And if they're working, go for it. There's nothing more to go for, because if you don't win, you're facing a losing season. It's just not going to work for you. And I'm not saying that this, Utah can't win this game. I just think the odds are stacked against Utah right now until they decide to change the discourse of that, right? If they can decide to use the momentum of Rice-Eccles Stadium, which is going to have a lot of BYU fans in it, but it's still going to be a majority of Utah fans. if you can change the discourse, change the momentum, now you have the upper hand. Now you've got BYU thinking they have to do everything right to win that game. And that doesn't mean that they have to execute perfectly, right? Like, I get that. But, like, it's so much harder to be an undefeated team coming into a hostile territory with a team that has nothing to lose. Utah literally has nothing to lose. If Kyle Whittingham retired at the end of the season, like, you know, I know that's the speculation and everything, and it's trending towards that way. He's going to do everything he can to beat BYU, because if he can go out and have one more win over BYU and showcase, hey, it doesn't even matter that we're having the worst season that we've had in probably my entire tenure at Utah, I can still come in there and beat you. That's the ultimate it just, that's what they're playing for. And BYU has to understand that and not allow them to get that momentum, or else it's over.
This, in essence, becomes Utah's bowl game.
Absolutely,
because I don't think you
be.
want to go to there's no appeal in going to Shreveport and beating, a Memphis or a Appalachian State
with half your roster already
right
committed
in
to
the
the
portal
NFL
wherever they're going, right? Like, shoot, I'd probably be committed to Rodizio Grill instead of going to that game, depending on what the food looks like.
I mean, the players were at the blackjack table last year at Las Vegas Bowl, but
yeah, and that's the thing. Like it just, and part of me wants to say, like, as they should be, like like you're 21, 22 years old, go have some fun. Like that's what college is for in some respects. I get that we draw a lot out of these teams, but this is definitely a game where you just need to let it all fly. There's nothing to save it for. And I do think there is an element of, it does feel like this is getting to be the point where it may be Kyle's last year. Just watching his body language and hearing him talk, and no one has any inside info on that, but if you're going to send the guy out, send him out right, like beat BYU.
What if like Utah beats BYU, and at this post-game press conference say, "This is my last season. See you later, suckers." That kind of stuff. Like,
he just retires right there. Like, that's it. That's the last game. What a walk-off.
Could you imagine?
That would be incredible.
And the way that he would do it, though, is he would do it with the ESPN like sideline reporter, and not even like with us as the media. Yeah. He'd just be like, "See you later."
By the way, I'm retiring as of right now.
Don't even ask any questions. I'm gone. Oh my gosh.
No interview. Listen, we won. I'm retiring. Have a good night.
Yeah. What's our record against BYU the last time? 10-1. Yeah, that's fine. I think that's good for my season.
Can you imagine what Kyle Whittingham was like when he was breaking up with his girlfriend?
Oh my
in high school and college. Like, well, in our estimation, this relationship has played its course, and we'll carry it on down the road.
Or was it the opposite? He was too loyal and just let the girl hang on for too long.
I mean, if that's the case that it was, I think it paid off, because Mrs. Whittingham is.
Oh, I'm not talking about her. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, she's great. She's great.
She is. She's the best. I don't know why we got on a tangent of talking about Kyle Whittingham dating resume, but yeah,
it would be entertaining. But
I would love to hear the stories.
Those stories he's not telling. Those are the ones with the Jim McMahon that nobody's talking about.
I want that Kyle Whittingham. That's part of why I kind of want him to move on, so he can start telling some of the stories.
Do you think he will, or he's just take those to the grave?
I hope so.
It would have to be Freddie telling those stories about Kyle, even though he wouldn't know them all.
You'd have to get someone who he trusts enough to help him open up. But I do feel like he wants to share some things, because I will never forget being in the presser where he got so excited to tell the Rogaine joke about Britton Covey.
Yes.
and just watching his hands as he got ready to the delivery and all of it, because he wants to be a part of that.
Oh,
right?
he's a funny guy. He really
is. And we've seen him dance with the players. That's the part that maybe makes me so sad about this season, is I love that happy Kyle Whittingham that's having a good time, and it does not feel like he's having a good time. The one that can slip in the nice leather pants, at the end of an interview, and everybody understands that coming from Kyle Whittingham, it's just a genuine compliment. He's also a sneaky, high fashion guy, very, very on top of things. People don't realize that about Kyle. So yeah, I do want to see more of that aspect of him, because this is a man that's been, whether he cares about it or not, he's been a huge part of my life. Like I remember going to Ronnie Mack camps when I was 8 years old and being scared to death of Kyle Whittingham, but he was a menace, like in a good way, just completely in shape, high energy, all that kind of stuff. And so like I hope he does take some time to open up and share some of the stories, because that's part of it's for one, he deserves that right and that opportunity. And I know he hates the media, but people would celebrate it a lot more once he's removed from the day-to-day of winning and losing. And the second part about it too is it helps build the lore of the program, the community, and that's they desperately need that as they transition to the next phase of things. And I just to tie this all together, because we're off on a random tangent, no surprise with me being involved. Like what a way it would be to send him out with a win against BYU, or at least right the ship. I just it's getting to the point to me where it's just really, really hard to see him coming back next year.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so you wonder, like, I guess my question would be, would you run the risk of like telling the kids like, hey, this is my last year, this is my last time I'm gonna play BYU. Let's go all out.
I feel like Kyle's the type of person where he doesn't want to reveal that, but in this instance, I could absolutely see him doing that, because it's like this is the ultimate win one for the Gipper type mentality. Yeah. And as much as Kyle doesn't like to bring that upon himself, I think this would be the one case where that is it. And if the team knows that he's done and they have to do this, and especially a majority of those guys in that roster are 100% respecting Kyle Whittingham. There's maybe somebody out there that doesn't. I don't know. Everybody loves the guy. But like,
there's always one person that doesn't love their boss. It is what it is.
But like, if you could do that and you had all that motivation, an 8-0 team, a guy that's going out on his legacy in his 20th year, I mean, like, that becomes one of those legendary moments where those players are going to talk about that forever, right? Like, we did this for coach. And then you're going to get these memoirs or whatever it may be where everybody talks about this horrible season. You were 4-4. We all rallied around. I mean, it's the Rudy type situation, right? Like, it's not exact, obviously, duh. But like, it's those moments where it's like you want to talk about that and share that experience and say, this is what we did for our head coach. We wanted him to go out on the right terms.
That's in essence what happened with BYU in 2000 when Lavelle Edwards was going out, right? And they carried him off on the field. Now, I don't expect that because it's November 9th.
Could you imagine Kyle being carried off the field?
What a scene.
I would love that. Yeah. Okay. Well, we've gone long, so I want to kind of get you out on one thing.
Otherwise, I'm going to start talking about rushing the field and when to execute that properly.
Yeah, we're not going to get into that. There's been too many rushing the field instances at Rice-Eccles Stadium. So, last question for me, and then we'll wrap this up. How does Utah win this game? I'm not asking you to score or predict or any of that kind of stuff. Both of us, I would say, generally think that BYU can win this game and probably will win this game just based on everything. But how does Utah win this game?
I think offensively, I think it's your one matchup win are the tight ends. I think Utah's tight end group is impressive. They haven't performed up to what maybe our expectations, but BYU really hasn't faced the tight end group the way that Utah's the level of Utah's. And so I think you can find some ways to match up your tight ends against that defense and get whoever your quarterback is some easy throws, some makeable throws that will help move the ball. I think you have to establish the run game, no matter what. Jack Kelly is a menace. We haven't really talked about him that much on the pod, but you mentioned the linebacker group as a whole. Jack Kelly is the motor of that group, but Glasker and Taggart are elite as well. And so I think you really have to balance that out. And so we'll see, offensively what they're able to come up with in terms of plans. I expect motion. I expect shifts. I expect a heavy usage. Again, I said personnel to try and throw BYU off the scent. But defensively, I think we've broken it down pretty heavily. It's you've got to force Jake Retzlaff into pressure situations, whether you do it with 3, 4, or 6 men, however many it takes, I guess. Force him into pressure so he makes those bad decisions and try and force some turnovers. But the other thing too is like this is a game where it feels like the special teams advantage is actually on the BYU side of the ball.
Absolutely.
And Utah really needs to buckle up and execute on that side of it, because Haven't seen a lot in the return game, both kickoff or punt. With Micah Pittman done, Dorian Singer had taken over those duties anyways, but field position can be critical in this one, especially with all the conversation about what what BYU likes to do on 3rd and 4th down. So that's how I see it unfolding. I made a rule for myself that anytime I was speaking publicly, I would just always pick Utah.
Okay.
And so like it's just I know that's maybe not very journalistic of me, but I will pick Utah in this game. I think it'd be a close one. It'd probably be like 24-21 if they do end up winning, something like that. But that's how I see the game breaking down. I'm curious what you think.
Yeah, I'm honestly going to go simple. Obviously, I like what the defense can do, and I think if the defense can say assignment sound, that's going to be job number one, right? Outside of that, Utah has to maintain its identity on offense, and that identity isn't what we've seen this year. It's the identity of what Utah has always done. That's establish the run, be physical in the trenches, use the play action pass to your advantage, and then just use the time advantage that you've got, right? Like we talked about early on in the podcast about having more opportunities. This is the game where you do not want BYU to have more opportunities. And so you're going to do whatever you can to drain that clock as quickly as you can, try to get some points on the board, and just do it the Utah way, right? If Utah can do that, I think they have a chance. This is still a tall task, right? Like BYU is not ranked in the top 10 just by chance, right? Like anybody that's watched BYU play understands that they are a good team. There may be instances where you say, oh, well, maybe they're being overhyped in this area. Maybe. But at the same respect, like this is a very solid team. And if Utah does not respect them, which they do, they respect them. They understand who they can be. They also want to beat them tremendously bad. I don't know if that was a terrible phrasing of that, but like this is a team where you have to be an assignment sound, right? And especially in a game where it's going to be very emotional, you cannot let those penalties rack up, right? Like there's going to be penalties, but you can't let those critical ones, whether it be a personal foul or any of these unsportsmanlike conduct type things, that can absolutely change the tone of the game. So you have to stay assignment sound, you have to do your job, and then maintain Utah's identity. If you can do that, that's still not to say that Utah will win this game, but I think that gives you the best fighting chance in this game more than anything else that you can do.
Yeah, I agree completely. And then, again, back to the Will Ferrell, we've got to keep our composure. I think that's a big part of it for Utah because it is going to be an emotional game regardless, and BYU is going to try and bait them into every single thing possible. And so maintain composure, play discipline, play well. And really Utah has just been aching to come out and have a good performance. I thought they were going to do it against Houston. It felt like early on that's the way things were trending, and then just derailed. But I think a bye week off and a little extra something to play for should give Utah. We'll see a different version of this Utah team this week for sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Bryan. I appreciate you coming on. It's always great to chat with you, and hopefully we can catch up again and do this again. I've got to twist your arm a bit, right?
I know my place. I'm like I said, I'm always left out, end of the bench, guard of the water, but it is fun to jump on and talk with you. You're my boy, Blue. So
I'm glad we could go full circle on that. So appreciate it, man. We'll chat with you guys later. Recap this on Monday and see how Utah did. But with that, we are signing off today. Have a great day.